Another part that I'd like to talk about in the making of Latino culture, the making of, is the consuming of Latino culture on the part of Latinos and everybody else. There has been a very strong sense of a kind of behaviorist model behind understanding how culture works on us Latinos, us human beings. We read it in the paper. It's in the news very often where something happened. A teenager was listening to a certain kind of music, and then the media will immediately blame the music for the violent action of that teenager, thinking of Columbine and others. But actually, if we look at the science today, the cognitive science, the neuroscience today, we see that we're much more complicated than that. There is no causal or even correlation between what we hear and what we do. We're much more complicated. If we were stuck in a little padded room and only fed, let's say, Barbie dolls that were Anglo, and we are a little Latina girl, yes, we would start to develop some form of psychoses. But in fact, the world and everything that we encounter in the world is so richly textured and diverse that we begin to, in fact, interact and imagine and transform that world constantly in a very active way. Why do I mention this? Precisely, let's think about Barbie doll. Barbie doll has, as everybody knows, been very traditionally a certain kind of shape, a certain kind of phenotype, a certain kind of dressed doll for girls. And I have a little girl. She has lots of Barbie dolls. They include, of course, brown Barbie dolls, and they include white Barbie dolls and black Barbie dolls, and so on. I spent a lot of time very concerned about how she would interact with those Barbie dolls and whether or not it would impact her self-identity. But in fact, what you see with children playing with anything is that their imagination is much richer than the fixed object that they are playing with. So often I would see my little girl, Karina, playing with any kind of a Barbie doll, but that Barbie doll's fixed function would become infinite in her imagination. So that Barbie doll would become something like a bridge or a rocket or all sorts of different kinds of things. So in other words, we need to understand how cultural products are made, how they are interpreted, how they are, that is, consumed, but consumed in a very layered, textured way, precisely because we aren't passive sponges just soaking this up. We are responding to that cultural product, that cultural object. So even in the case of a Barbie, where there has been traditionally a diminished will to style, diminished willful distillation and recreation of the building blocks of reality that are Latino inclusive. When you actually see the interaction of children with that object, it becomes something infinite in its possibilities. That's another part of my argument here in discussing Latino culture in general, that we need to remind ourselves that while there are creators making and producing, and there are certain economic forces behind the creating that may straitjacket what product is finally brought to us, the actual imagining and an interface with that object can and is quite layered, multi-layered, reimagined. And later, someone like Karina may in fact decide to make her own doll or make her own comic book or make her own movie that has a greater willfulness in the distillation and recreation of this reality that results in cultural objects that we're calling Latino